The Critics' Choice Awards of 2026 were already shaping up to be unforgettable, but no one could have predicted just how explosive the night would become. Picture this: the red carpet glistening under thousands of flashing cameras, Hollywood's elite draped in designer gowns and tuxedos, the air thick with anticipation and whispered gossip. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. And then, in a moment that would ripple across social media, Chelsea Handler stepped up to the microphone and did the unthinkable. "Let's give it up for the real princess tonight," she said, her eyes glinting with mischief, pausing just long enough for the crowd to catch the weight of her words. The camera zoomed in. Meghan Markle, poised and smiling, froze ever so slightly, her lips pressed together, just enough to hint that the jab had landed. But what Chelsea didn't know, or maybe she did, was that this single quip would ignite a chain reaction that no one, not even Meghan herself, could have anticipated. The question buzzing through the minds of everyone present, and millions watching from around the globe, was obvious. Did Chelsea just expose Meghan's carefully curated image as nothing more than a performance? Was this a harmless joke, or a revelation too blunt for the polished world of celebrity diplomacy? Even in the hall filled with Hollywood's finest, there was a palpable tension, the kind that makes you feel as though the walls themselves are holding their breath. Meghan had survived red carpets before, had deflected countless barbs from tabloids and talk shows alike. But this was different. Chelsea wasn't anonymous, wasn't an outsider. She was an insider with reach, influence, and a voice sharp enough to cut through years of PR polish. The cameras caught the reactions in real time. Some celebrities chuckled awkwardly, unsure whether to join in or remain neutral. Others, who had previously smiled and nodded at Meghan's arrival, suddenly looked uncomfortable, eyes darting as if seeking guidance on how to respond. Even Meghan's most loyal allies were caught off guard. And in that flash of uncertainty, something subtle but significant happened. The world witnessed the vulnerability of a woman who, for years, had meticulously balanced the worlds of royalty and Hollywood. It was a moment of exposure, a crack in the armor, and the audience couldn't look away. Social media, of course, went into immediate overdrive. Clips of the moment circulated within minutes, with commentary ranging from awe to amusement, from schadenfreude to defense. Chelsea Handler calls Meghan a fake princess. One headline read, "Red carpet drama. Handler schools Markle on royal status," another declared. Hashtags multiplied like wildfire, trending in countries Meghan hadn't even visited recently. Memes exploded overnight, some mocking, some supportive, some downright savage, each one amplifying the spectacle. Within hours, the debate was no longer about the Critics' Choice Awards themselves. It was about Meghan Markle's very identity. Who was she really? And why had no one noticed until now that even Hollywood's sharpest voices were questioning her claim to royalty? But to understand why this single comment carried so much weight, you have to step back and examine Meghan's journey. From her early days in Hollywood, where she was known for her roles on popular television dramas, to her whirlwind entrance into the British royal family, Meghan has lived a life under relentless scrutiny. Every move, every outfit, every word spoken in public has been dissected, debated, and often distorted by a media machine hungry for drama. And yet, she managed to cultivate a public image of grace, modernity, and, above all, legitimacy. But Chelsea's remark wasn't about her acting career or even her public persona in Hollywood. It was about the most personal claim Meghan had ever made, her royal status. By labeling her fake, Handler tapped into a narrative Meghan had worked tirelessly to control, a narrative that straddled both admiration and envy, fascination and skepticism. Chelsea Handler, for those unfamiliar, is no stranger to controversy. Her career has been built on sharp wit, fearless commentary, and a willingness to cross boundaries others wouldn't dare approach. Over the years, she has taken down politicians, celebrities, and cultural norms with the same biting precision. Her style isn't subtle. It isn't cautious. It's deliberate. So when she took the microphone at the Critics' Choice Awards, the audience understood, even subconsciously, that her words were meant to resonate far beyond the walls of the venue. Handler wasn't just cracking a joke. She was making a statement, one that would echo through magazines, television screens, social media feeds, and private conversations alike. The tension in the room was almost cinematic. You could feel it in Meghan's slight pause, in the sudden stiffening of her posture, in the camera operators who instinctively leaned in for a closer shot. It was as if everyone collectively realized this was more than a momentary embarrassment. This was the unveiling of a subtle, pervasive truth, or at least a truth as Handler saw it. And in Hollywood, perception is reality. In that instant, Handler had taken a scalpel to the image Meghan had so carefully sculpted, revealing the potential fragility beneath the glimmering surface. But there was more lurking beneath the laughter and flashes of the paparazzi. Chelsea's comment, though public and pointed, also acted as a catalyst for deeper questions that many had quietly asked over the years. How much of Meghan's public persona is crafted for consumption? How much is authentic? And how does one navigate the impossible expectations of being a global figure, a Hollywood icon, and a so-called princess, all at once? These were not just rhetorical questions for the audience. They were pressing realities that Meghan herself would have to confront. Meanwhile, behind the cameras, whispers began to spread. Insiders hinted at private conversations, staff members rushing to control damage, advisors debating the best way to respond without escalating the situation. Rumors circulated that Meghan had considered walking away from the awards entirely, a move that could have generated even more headlines. But she remained. She smiled. She nodded. And she endured. This choice, whether calculated or instinctual, demonstrated a key element of Meghan's public persona, her ability to maintain composure under pressure. Yet even the most composed veneer has its limits, and the question lingered. How long could she maintain this balance before the ripple effects of Handler's comment reached into her private life, her family, and her carefully curated public narrative? And that, of course, was just the beginning. Because the night was far from over. The remark had been made, the cameras had captured it, and the world had seen it. Yet no one could predict the aftermath. The viral moments, the media scrutiny, the social media explosions, the private fallout, and the ripple effects that would touch everyone from Hollywood insiders to royal advisors. Chelsea's joke had acted as a spark, and what would follow was a firestorm no one could have contained. So now, viewers are left with a question. What happens when the carefully constructed world of a global celebrity collides with the unfiltered audacity of someone like Chelsea Handler? How do you recover when your very identity is challenged in front of millions? And most importantly, what secrets, strategies, and surprises are waiting just behind the curtain, ready to redefine the narrative completely? Because Chelsea's joke, while funny to some, was a message to many. It was a reminder that no matter how polished, no matter how prepared, no one is immune to scrutiny. Not even a woman who has navigated the impossible worlds of Hollywood and royalty simultaneously. Handler had exposed a crack, and that crack would widen in ways no one yet imagined. And as Meghan stood there, the flashbulbs capturing her every subtle reaction, a question lingered in the minds of everyone watching. How would she respond? Would she strike back publicly? Retreat quietly? Or was there a counter-strategy brewing behind the cameras? A move so calculated it could turn the narrative on its head? The answers were coming. But what came next would change everything. And no one saw it coming. The Critics' Choice Awards red carpet is usually a spectacle of glamour, glitz, and careful choreography. Celebrities parade past flashing cameras, smiles perfectly rehearsed, designers' names proudly displayed on tags, every hair and makeup strand meticulously arranged. But this year, the red carpet had a different energy. The moment Chelsea Handler spoke, a ripple moved through the crowd, subtle at first, then undeniable. Laughter, whispers, nervous glances. Meghan Markle's poised exterior had been punctured, if only slightly, by Handler's jab about her real, royal status. The question in everyone's mind was immediate. How would she handle it? Viewers might assume that Meghan, seasoned in public scrutiny, would brush it off. But this was different. This wasn't a tabloid headline or a late-night monologue. This was live, cameras rolling. A moment captured in high definition that could, and would, be dissected frame by journalists, influencers, and social media users worldwide. The world was watching, and Meghan had no safety net. Imagine the scene in slow motion. Meghan approaches the photographers, gliding in a flowing gown, flashes reflecting off her jewelry. The audience sees a composed figure, elegant, commanding attention. But look closer. The slight tightening of her jaw, the fleeting hesitation before she turns fully toward the cameras. Handler's words echoed in the air. For those paying attention, it was a subtle signal that Meghan had felt the sting. And yet, she smiled. She waved. She endured. But endurance doesn't erase impact. Chelsea Handler, meanwhile, had delivered her line with perfect timing. A smirk that suggested mischief, eyes scanning the room to gauge reactions. Was she simply being cheeky, or was this calculated, aimed to destabilize a figure whose life has always straddled two worlds? Hollywood and royalty? Audience laughter, half nervous, half amused, punctuated her words. But laughter in this setting is complex. It's a mix of approval, relief, and sometimes complicity. Handler understood that better than anyone. She knew the dynamics. She knew the cameras. And she knew the effect a single line could have on someone as media-savvy as Meghan. Backstage, Meghan's team reacted immediately. Advisors whispered to each other, debating the best response. Some urged calm, others suggested proactive statements, yet others worried that any response might escalate the situation further. There was no handbook for this, no precedent, and that, ironically, was Handler's strength. She had inserted herself into a space where traditional protocols could not operate. Meanwhile, social media's machinery kicked into overdrive. Clips of Handler's jokes spread across platforms in minutes. Hashtags like #FakePrincess and #ChelseaClapsBack trended almost immediately. Memes proliferated, some mocking, some praising, others dissecting Meghan's reaction frame by frame. Twitter threads debated intent. Instagram Reels recreated moments with dramatic flair. TikTok users speculated about the unseen backstage conversations. In Hollywood, perception is everything, and Handler had just nudged the narrative needle. The public reaction was swift, relentless, and impossible to ignore. The press, sensing a story too juicy to resist, began analyzing every movement, every glance. Headlines appeared within hours. Handler schools Markle on royal status. Chelsea's red carpet jab sparks royal debate. Meghan faces unprecedented public scrutiny at Critics' Choice Awards. Each headline, though slightly different, carried a common thread. Meghan's claim to her royal persona was now under examination. The contrast between her carefully maintained public image and Handler's bold, unsparing humor could not have been starker. But what made the red carpet moment even more dramatic was the way other celebrities reacted. Some smiled, some stiffened, others exchanged subtle glances, unsure how to navigate this sudden tension. Hollywood thrives on spectacle, but this was unscripted, unsanitized. For the first time in months, Meghan was not controlling the narrative, someone else was. And that, for a woman whose life revolves around calculated appearances, was a rare and jarring experience. It wasn't just the laughter or the camera flashes. It was the weight of scrutiny. Handler's joke had the effect of exposing the invisible scaffolding behind Meghan's public persona. Years of careful image management, charitable work, media training, and royal duties suddenly seemed, to some observers, almost performative. And while Meghan had faced criticism before, this was different. The jabs weren't anonymous or distant. They were delivered publicly, with precision, by someone whose voice carries significant influence. Observers later reported that Meghan's inner circle debated whether to issue a statement. Was a denial appropriate? Would defending oneself make the situation worse? Or was silence the better weapon, allowing the moment to pass without further amplification? These strategic decisions are part of the unseen machinery that governs celebrity lives. Yet even these calculated steps cannot fully insulate someone from the repercussions of a public affront on this scale. In that charged atmosphere, Handler's statement was a catalyst. It prompted reactions not just from those present at the awards, but from the global audience. News outlets speculated about Handler's motivations. Analysts debated whether it was spontaneous humor or a carefully orchestrated commentary. Some speculated about personal grievances or past interactions. Meanwhile, social media users dissected the minute details, Meghan's subtle flinch, her smile, the timing of her wave, all evidence in a digital court of public opinion. And yet, beneath the public spectacle, something more subtle was occurring. Handler's joke had acted as a mirror. It reflected not only Meghan's carefully curated image, but also the fascination, envy, and skepticism of the world watching. People weren't laughing merely at the comment. They were reacting to the tension between perception and reality. Meghan, as much as she had cultivated an image of grace and authority, was now subjected to the raw, unfiltered curiosity of millions who wondered, how real is this royal persona? How much is performance? And what does it mean to hold a title or claim? In a world obsessed with authenticity and celebrity? Meanwhile, inside the venue, Meghan's team had begun executing contingency plans. Staff whispered in corridors, coordinating with PR teams and advisors. Phone calls were made to key media outlets. Scripts were drafted for possible interviews. But Handler had already moved the narrative into the public domain, and no backstage strategy could fully reclaim control. This tension between preparation and spontaneity, control and chaos, is at the heart of celebrity life, and it was on full display that night. The reactions outside the venue were just as dramatic. Paparazzi flooded social media with photos and short video clips, each capturing slightly different angles of the moment. Influencers posted their takes almost immediately, framing the narrative for younger audiences. The digital conversation grew exponentially, with each new post amplifying the previous ones. Handler's joke, though brief, had become the centerpiece of an unfolding media storm, one that would dominate headlines, podcasts, and YouTube discussions for days. And the most compelling aspect? Meghan's own response was nuanced, almost imperceptible to the casual observer, but unmistakable to those paying attention. Her smile, her wave, her measured composure. Each action was a carefully chosen signal, a mix of dignity and strategic restraint. It was a silent acknowledgement that while Handler had momentarily seized control of the narrative, Meghan was not defeated. She would respond, just not yet. Yet the tension was far from resolved. Handler had planted a seed. Questions would linger long after the red carpet lights dimmed. Fans and critics alike would speculate, dissect, and debate Meghan's status, her intentions, and the meaning of Handler's audacity. Was this the beginning of a public unraveling, or the prelude to a clever countermove by Meghan? And more importantly, who else in Hollywood or the royal sphere would weigh in, knowing that any comment could become part of this rapidly evolving story? The energy in the venue, electric and tense, hinted at the stakes. For Meghan, the moment was not just about public perception. It was about control, reputation, and identity. Handler's joke had cracked open the facade, if only for an instant, leaving everyone wondering, how would Meghan navigate this sudden, high-pressure scrutiny? And as viewers, the question lingers with us too. What comes next when someone dares to publicly challenge a figure who has meticulously managed her image for years? Because in Hollywood, as in royalty, perception is everything. And when a figure like Chelsea Handler interrupts the carefully orchestrated narrative, the ripple effects can be seismic. What seems like a brief joke on the red carpet can evolve into a media storm, a social media frenzy, and a public debate that spans continents. Meghan Markle had faced countless challenges, but this night was unique, a direct, public challenge delivered with wit, audacity, and precision. And just when it seemed the moment had passed, when the flashes had faded and the audience had moved on to the next arrival, a new factor emerged. Clips of the joke began to circulate in private channels, shared by celebrities, influencers, and media insiders with commentary that suggested deeper stakes. Some framed it as harmless humor, others as a strategic commentary, and still others as a precursor to something more consequential. The red carpet, once just a stage for glamour, had become a battleground for public image, influence, and narrative control. And as Meghan continued down the red carpet, smiling for the cameras and acknowledging the crowd with practiced grace, the thought lingered in everyone's minds. This was far from over. Chelsea Handler had sparked a conversation that would not fade. The public, the press, Hollywood insiders, and perhaps even members of the royal family would all watch, wait, and react in the days and weeks to come. And in that moment, one thing was clear. What came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Have you ever wondered why some celebrities never just appear at events, but seem to arrive with a mission? Chelsea Handler is one of those rare figures who doesn't just show up. she stakes her claim. And when she took the microphone at the 2026 Critics' Choice Awards, it wasn't a spontaneous quip. It was decades in the making. Chelsea's history with the British royal family, Hollywood royalty, and public figures like Meghan Markle reads less like a biography and more like a calculated dossier of timing, wit, and audacity. To understand the power behind that one line, let's give it up for the real princess tonight. You need to understand Handler's trajectory. She began her career in stand-up comedy, a world that rewards sharp edges and fearless commentary. Every joke tested boundaries. Every laugh was a victory over social norms, over the people who try to dictate what is acceptable. As her career transitioned to television, books, and talk shows, she carried that same razor-sharp instinct for calling out pretense. Handler isn't subtle. She doesn't hedge. She observes, she calculates, and she strikes. Over the years, Handler has developed a reputation as both friend and nemesis to the world of celebrity. Hollywood loves her for the same reason it fears her. She speaks truths that others only whisper. Politicians, actors, producers, all have been targets of her witty, unflinching commentary. Some leave her shows laughing, others seething, but no one leaves indifferent. That's the power she brought to the Critics' Choice Awards red carpet, and it's a power Meghan had underestimated or perhaps assumed would be tempered by the usual Hollywood politeness. Handler's interactions with the royal narrative are equally storied. Long before 2026, Chelsea had made subtle jabs at royal figures, sometimes humorous, sometimes biting. She's commented on protocol violations, public appearances, and the curious fascination Hollywood has with monarchy. It's a recurring theme in her career, examining the gulf between image and reality. Meghan Markle, as the modern figure straddling both worlds, was a natural focal point. Chelsea didn't need to fabricate drama. She simply had to observe, note inconsistencies, and deliver her assessment with comedic precision. But Chelsea's history with Meghan specifically is a tangled web. Rumors of prior meetings, private jokes at charity events, and comments made in interviews all suggest that Chelsea had Meghan on her radar long before the awards. Some insiders claim there were exchanges on social media that, while seemingly innocuous, were subtle tests, a way to gauge Meghan's public persona and her tolerance for scrutiny. Others suggest that Handler has long harbored skepticism about Hollywood's obsession with royal narratives, seeing them as performative theater rather than genuine authority. Meghan, in this framework, became a symbol, a living example of the collision between media spectacle and royalty. The brilliance of Chelsea's 2026 Critics' Choice quip lies not just in the words, but in the timing and context. Handler had been preparing her approach to public appearances for years, studying reactions, understanding audience psychology, and observing media cycles. Comedy, especially of the sharp-tongued variety, is as much about observation as delivery. And when she looked at Meghan on that red carpet, she recognized the perfect moment to highlight what she sees as the discrepancy between image and reality. It was a culmination of years of awareness, timing, and strategic thinking. Of course, Handler's relationship with Hollywood is complicated. She is both celebrated and criticized for her candidness. Some celebrities avoid her, fearing the exposure of private truths. Others court her attention, hoping for the credibility her commentary can lend. This duality gives her an unusual leverage. She's unpredictable. At any given moment, she could be an ally, a critic, or both. And in Meghan's case, Handler's position as an independent commentator with a wide-reaching platform made her words not just a joke, but a statement with tangible influence. There's also Handler's track record with social commentary. She has long criticized public figures who rely too heavily on curated images, exposing the fissures between public perception and personal reality. Handler's humor often cuts through veneers, forcing audiences to question narratives they might have accepted without scrutiny. So when she made her remark about Meghan's royal status, it was more than comedy. It was a lens into her philosophy. Authenticity over performance, transparency over spectacle, reality over pretense. But Chelsea doesn't operate in isolation. She understands the ecosystem of celebrity, media, and public perception. Every joke, every statement, is amplified by social media, news cycles, and Hollywood gossip. By choosing the Critics' Choice Awards as her stage, she ensured her commentary would resonate. The event itself, brimming with cameras, influencers, and media professionals, acted as a perfect amplifier. And Meghan, caught in the middle of this ecosystem, faced a complex challenge: how to respond without escalating, without looking defensive, without surrendering the narrative entirely. Handler's previous jabs at public figures also reveal a pattern. She often targets figures whose carefully maintained image contrasts sharply with their human vulnerabilities. She understands that humor is a weapon and a lens. Her quip about Meghan wasn't simply a one-off insult. It was a calculated observation delivered in a public forum designed to maximize exposure. And the psychological impact is profound. For someone like Meghan, who has spent years cultivating poise and control, having that control publicly questioned can create ripple effects far beyond the initial moment. Yet Chelsea's humor isn't purely confrontational. It carries a reflective element, an invitation for audiences to question their own perceptions. The "real princess" line, though pointed, also sparked debate. Who decides what makes someone royal? Is it bloodline, ceremony, public recognition, or the ability to command attention and respect? Handler's brilliance lies in her ability to provoke these questions while remaining entertaining. It's a delicate balance, the kind that makes her both beloved and feared. Insiders at the 2026 Critics' Choice Awards later reported that Handler's remark had been met with mixed reactions among attendees. Some quietly applauded her courage to speak openly. Others winced, fearing the potential fallout. Meghan's inner circle, of course, felt the sting most acutely. Advisors debated the optics. Should Meghan respond publicly, issue a statement, or remain silent? Each option carried risks. Responding could escalate the situation. Staying silent could be interpreted as tacit agreement. Handler, in her role as provocateur, had placed Meghan in a strategic dilemma that would reverberate in the coming days. Even beyond Hollywood, Chelsea's reputation as a commentator and disruptor ensured that her words would travel quickly. Analysts on media panels dissected the joke, social media threads exploded with opinion, and memes spread across platforms. The public became participants in Handler's narrative, amplifying her reach exponentially. It was a textbook example of how one well-timed statement can influence global discourse, especially when it touches on identity, status, and celebrity. And yet, beneath the comedy, beneath the flashbulbs and applause, there was an undeniable tension. Handler's line challenged Meghan's authority in a domain she thought she had mastered. It exposed the fragility of image, the volatility of perception, and the intensity of public scrutiny. Meghan's reputation, carefully managed over years, was suddenly under a new kind of microscope, one that laughed, questioned, and scrutinized simultaneously. Handler had shifted the narrative from admiration to interrogation in the blink of an eye. By the end of the red carpet, the world had witnessed more than just a joke. They had seen a collision of personalities, platforms, and philosophies. Handler had positioned herself as a truth-teller of sorts, questioning authenticity in a world obsessed with image. Meghan, on the other hand, was caught navigating the aftermath, balancing poise with internal calculation. It was a moment that would define discussions in the media, social circles, and online forums for weeks. But the story didn't stop at the red carpet. Chelsea's history with Meghan, Hollywood, and the monarchy suggested this was only the opening act. Every past interaction, every subtle dig, every observation from years of commentary contributed to the weight behind that one line. The audience at the Critics' Choice Awards had merely witnessed the culmination of a long, intricate dance between two public figures operating in highly scrutinized worlds. And now, as the evening progressed, whispers began circulating about private conversations, backstage reactions, and strategies forming in real time. Meghan's team was analyzing, recalculating, preparing for what could be the next phase of Handler's commentary. Chelsea, having achieved her initial goal, creating attention, sparking discussion, generating reaction, had set the stage for a far larger narrative to unfold. So the question remained, what comes next when someone like Chelsea Handler directly challenges a figure as high-profile as Meghan Markle? How does one navigate the collision of humor, scrutiny, and global attention? And most intriguingly, what secrets from Handler's past interactions with Hollywood and the royal narrative might surface to amplify the moment even further? Because while the red carpet spectacle may have ended, the story was far from over. Handler's history, her strategy, and her keen observation skills meant that Meghan's carefully curated world had just encountered a force it couldn't ignore. And what came next, the private responses, the media storms, the celebrity whispers, would change everything. No one saw it coming, but everyone would feel the impact. Have you ever wondered what it really takes to craft a royal image in the modern world? Not just being born into a title, not just attending ceremonies, but meticulously constructing a persona that convinces millions of people, and even entire media empires, that you belong? That's the world Meghan Markle stepped into. And the 2026 Critics' Choice Awards moment with Chelsea Handler revealed a truth few were prepared to confront. Much of that royal persona is carefully curated, carefully rehearsed, and carefully protected. From the moment Meghan entered the public eye, she has lived under a microscope. Every smile, every gesture, every word spoken has been analyzed by tabloids, commentators, and fans alike. But the scrutiny wasn't just about performance. It was about identity. Meghan, as an American actress who became a duchess, embodies a collision of worlds: Hollywood glitz, royal tradition, and public expectation. Handler's quip, that sly, real princess jab, didn't just make the audience laugh. It peeled back the layer of spectacle, forcing viewers to consider how much of Meghan's persona is authentic and how much is constructed. To understand the weight of that moment, you have to look at the building blocks of Meghan's public identity. Her royal persona is not simply inherited, it's cultivated. From her first appearances at royal events, Meghan was coached on posture, tone, and engagement. Every public smile was intended to convey warmth and approachability. Every hand gesture calibrated to appear graceful yet commanding. Media advisors worked tirelessly to maintain a narrative of empathy, modernity, and responsibility. But Handler's comment pierced that careful veneer in a way subtle criticism could not. It forced the world to question not just Meghan's actions, but the foundation of the image itself. What makes this unmasking so compelling is the tension between authenticity and performance. Meghan's public image has always walked a tightrope. On one hand, she needs to exude the dignity and decorum expected of someone associated with the British monarchy. On the other, she is a celebrity accustomed to Hollywood's spotlight, accustomed to narratives shaped for entertainment and attention. Chelsea Handler, intentionally or not, highlighted the collision of these two worlds. The polished duchess and the media-savvy actress. The audience couldn't help but notice the contrast, subtle as it might be, and the internet exploded in speculation. Let's pause and consider the psychology at play. Handler's line was funny, yes, but humor often reveals deeper truths. By calling Meghan a real princess sarcastically, Handler highlighted the performative nature of Meghan's role. She implied that Meghan's title, though official in ceremony, might not carry the same inherent authority or gravitas expected by observers. And the brilliance of that implication is in its ambiguity. Handler wasn't outright attacking Meghan's legitimacy, but she planted a seed of doubt, a seed that would germinate in the minds of millions watching around the world. The public reaction, as you might imagine, was immediate and intense. Some viewers saw Handler's jab as an affirmation of what they had long suspected. Meghan's royal image is more Hollywood than heritage. Others, loyal to Meghan, defended her vigorously, arguing that Handler's humor crossed a line and disrespected both Meghan and the institution she represents. Social media debates raged, breaking down into nuanced discussions about identity, authenticity, and the nature of modern royalty. Memes multiplied, some casting Meghan as a literal actress performing royalty, others framing Handler as the truth-teller exposing media-constructed myths. Yet the intrigue isn't limited to public perception. Meghan's inner circle, both in Hollywood and within royal-adjacent networks, reacted immediately. Advisors examined Handler's wording, her timing, her delivery. Was this an offhand joke or a strategic provocation? Some argued that Handler had anticipated the viral nature of her quip, understanding that social media would amplify it exponentially. Others suggested that even Chelsea, with all her insight, couldn't predict the emotional fallout, the subtle ways Meghan's composure might crack, the private tension that would seep into backstage spaces and personal relationships alike. One of the more fascinating aspects of this episode is the duality of Meghan's persona itself. On one hand, she embodies the perfection of royal training, poised, polite, photogenic. On the other, she is a woman shaped by Hollywood, accustomed to media scrutiny, adept at narrative control, familiar with manipulating perception to achieve desired outcomes. Handler's comment forced the world to reconcile these two images, to consider the possibility that the Duchess persona is, at least partially, a meticulously crafted performance. And yet, let's be clear. Meghan's public persona is not merely superficial. It has substance, cultivated over years of charitable work, public appearances, and advocacy. The contradiction lies in perception versus presentation. The public sees a seamless blend of celebrity charm and royal dignity. But what Handler's comment did was emphasize the delicate artifice beneath that polish. It's like a perfectly staged photograph. When you know where the lighting is, where the angles are, the result is beautiful but not entirely spontaneous. Chelsea, in one witty sentence, revealed the seams. The stakes of this exposure are profound. A royal title carries weight, but so does public perception. Handler's line didn't revoke Meghan's title, of course, but it made millions of viewers question the credibility and authenticity of her claim. This isn't just gossip. In a world obsessed with image, with social media virality, with the fusion of celebrity and status, the suggestion that Meghan's persona could be manufactured carries consequences. It affects alliances, sponsorships, interviews, and even the subtle power dynamics within Hollywood and the broader royal-adjacent community. Observers later noted Meghan's micro-expressions during Handler's quip. A fraction of a blink, a tightened jaw, a faint shift in stance, subtle but telling. These tiny signals hinted at the internal calculation happening behind the smile. Meghan had faced the world's scrutiny before, but Handler's joke cut differently. It wasn't a tabloid smear. It was a public commentary from a figure whose influence is both broad and respected. For Meghan, maintaining composure was essential, yet internal reactions, invisible to most, revealed tension, surprise, and perhaps even irritation. What makes this chapter of Meghan's story even more compelling is that Handler's words tapped into long-running questions about the nature of royalty itself. In the 21st century, what defines a royal? Bloodline, ceremony, media recognition, or public perception? Meghan's position in this evolving hierarchy is unique. She is not born into the royal lineage. She married into it. She occupies a space that is partly official, partly symbolic, partly performative. And Handler's joke, seemingly lighthearted, questioned this complex positioning with surgical precision. Meanwhile, as the awards ceremony continued, the dynamics backstage began to shift. Meghan's advisors quietly strategized about controlling narratives, social media teams prepared responses, and friends debated whether a subtle clarification or an outright statement was appropriate. Meanwhile, Handler, unaware of the full ramifications, had already shifted focus to the evening's next segment, leaving the ripples of her joke to expand organically. The moment was out of her hands, and that's exactly how Handler wanted it. She understood that humor is amplified when it's allowed to evolve without interference, when the audience becomes part of the narrative machinery. What's striking about this moment is the contradiction it exposes. Meghan, highly media-savvy and trained to maintain image, found herself momentarily unmoored by a single comment. Handler's words were fleeting, yet their impact was enduring. The public reaction, the media scrutiny, the social media conversations, all amplified the psychological pressure. In effect, Handler had briefly shifted control of the narrative, forcing Meghan to react indirectly through strategy, not emotion. It's a rare phenomenon in celebrity culture. The power of one well-delivered line to redirect attention, frame discourse, and challenge identity. And so the question lingers. How does someone like Meghan navigate an environment where perception is reality, where one joke can unearth questions about authenticity, and where every gesture is scrutinized for deeper meaning? What internal strategies does she employ to maintain poise, protect her image, and prepare for the inevitable waves of commentary that will follow? Handler's comment may have been humorous, but its consequences are serious, stretching across media platforms, personal relationships, and public perception alike. As the Critics' Choice Awards progressed, the layers of Meghan's persona were now under intense examination. Analysts dissected her reactions, social media dissected her history, and Hollywood insiders debated her motivations. Handler's joke had become a catalyst, sparking discussions about authenticity, status, and the delicate balance between celebrity and royalty. And yet, despite the scrutiny, Meghan maintained her public composure, a testament to her training, experience, and sheer determination. But the most intriguing aspect of this episode was what was yet to come. Handler's line had planted a seed, one that would grow into a media storm, influence public discourse, and provoke private responses from Meghan and her inner circle. The red carpet, for all its glamour, had become a battleground of perception, power, and narrative control. And as the cameras flashed and the social media posts multiplied, one thing was certain. The story of Meghan's royal persona, its authenticity, and the public's fascination with it was far from resolved. Handler's joke had unveiled cracks in a carefully constructed image, raised questions that millions would debate, and forced Meghan into a position she had rarely faced, reacting indirectly to a public commentary that challenged the very core of her identity. And just when it seemed the moment was contained, a new layer emerged. Private leaks, insider commentary, and unexpected celebrity reactions that would amplify the tension even further. What Meghan does next, how she responds in private and public, and whether Handler's observation triggers larger consequences remains to be seen. The red carpet may have ended, but the narrative it sparked is only beginning. And as viewers, as fans, as media observers, we are left asking the same question. How much of Meghan's royal persona is crafted? How much is authentic? And what surprises are waiting just beyond the public eye? What happens when two worlds collide? Not gently, not subtly, but with the force of expectation, tradition, and celebrity scrutiny? Hollywood versus the monarchy isn't just a headline. It's a collision of cultures, values, and power structures. And for Meghan Markle, Chelsea Handler's jab at the 2026 Critics' Choice Awards thrust her right into the center of that collision, exposing the friction that has existed ever since she became both a public figure in Hollywood and a duchess by marriage. Hollywood and the monarchy operate on fundamentally different rules. In Hollywood, fame is fluid. It's earned through performance, amplified through media, and measured by attention. Scandals can come and go. Public perception is malleable. Ratings, box office numbers, and viral moments dictate relevance. In the royal world, by contrast, status is codified, tradition-bound, and resistant to sudden swings. Bloodlines, ceremonial roles, and protocol govern influence. Mistakes are tolerated only to the extent that they don't disrupt the image of stability, dignity, or heritage. And when someone like Meghan straddles both worlds, every action, every smile, every statement, every public gesture becomes a negotiation between two radically different systems. Handler's quip on the red carpet highlighted this tension in a way that was impossible to ignore. To Hollywood audiences, Meghan was the actress, the celebrity, the personality cultivated through roles, interviews, and public appearances. To the monarchy, she was a duchess, bound by protocol, tradition, and the expectations of a centuries-old institution. Handler's words subtly challenged both identities simultaneously, poking fun at the royal title while implying the performance of it had an almost theatrical quality familiar to Hollywood insiders. The immediate reaction in Hollywood was fascinating. Celebrities, media personalities, and influencers quickly weighed in, some with humor, some with criticism. Social media lit up with debates. Was Handler being cruel, truthful, or just clever? Panels on entertainment networks dissected Meghan's expressions, her posture, and the subtle signals of discomfort or poise. Memes proliferated, and journalists speculated about the impact on her career, her social standing, and her carefully maintained image. Hollywood thrives on controversy, but it also respects mastery. Meghan's reaction, composed, controlled, and strategically restrained, was instantly noted as a display of expertise in managing public perception. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the monarchy's perspective was entirely different. Royal observers and protocol experts analyzed the clip and the accompanying media coverage. The real princess comment, though humorous, was perceived as a subtle critique of Meghan's adaptation to royal life. While she holds a legitimate title, Handler's phrasing suggested that Meghan's authority, elegance, or authenticity might be performative rather than inherent. In an institution obsessed with image and legitimacy, this is no small critique. It subtly questions her suitability for royal duties, her embodiment of royal demeanor, and her ability to navigate the expectations of centuries-old tradition. But why does this collision matter so much? The public's fascination with Meghan stems from the very tension Handler highlighted. Audiences are captivated by the duality of her life. Hollywood glamour meets royal restraint. Every award show appearance, interview, or public outing becomes a study in contrasts, a negotiation of identity. Chelsea's joke, brief as it was, crystallized this tension in a single, digestible moment. The humor wasn't the point. The revelation, the exposure, the subtle interrogation of authenticity was. And the stakes are higher than most realize. Hollywood's narrative is immediate, consuming, and ruthless. A viral moment can define a celebrity's reputation in hours, shaping casting opportunities, endorsement deals, and public perception. Handler's quip quickly became the nucleus around which media stories, op-eds, and social commentary orbited. For Meghan, this meant that the joke was no longer confined to a red carpet. It had been amplified, analyzed, and dissected across multiple platforms simultaneously. Every glance, every gesture afterward was under scrutiny, and the pressure was immense. In the monarchy, the repercussions are subtler but equally powerful. Royals are measured against centuries of precedent. Behavior, decorum, and optics matter far beyond immediate perception. Meghan's presence at high-profile Hollywood events has always been a delicate balance, respecting royal tradition while navigating the freedom of celebrity culture. Handler's joke pierced that equilibrium, reminding everyone that Meghan's dual roles are constantly under negotiation and that public commentary, even humorous, can influence perceptions within royal circles. Hollywood insiders recognized the genius behind Handler's timing. She chose an event saturated with media coverage, ensuring that the joke would not only reach millions, but resonate deeply. Her awareness of both the audience's fascination with celebrity culture and Meghan's unique position as a royal figure turned humor into commentary, and commentary into a global story. This is how Hollywood thrives on spectacle, by finding intersections where personality, power, and perception collide. Handler didn't just crack a joke. She orchestrated a moment that would dominate headlines, social media, and backstage gossip for days. For Meghan, the collision wasn't just public, it was intensely personal. Every reaction from Hollywood friends, royal advisors, and the general public had layers of meaning. Laughter might suggest amusement, admiration might hint at alignment, and critique could be interpreted as betrayal. Managing perception in this dual world requires constant vigilance, strategic thinking, and an acute understanding of both systems' rules. Handler's intervention forced Meghan into immediate negotiation. How to maintain dignity, authority, and credibility when one world expected vulnerability and the other demanded flawless composure. Observers noted the subtle cues Meghan exhibited in response. A carefully measured smile, a shift in stance, a controlled acknowledgement of the cameras. These micro-behaviors signaled awareness, adaptability, and strategic restraint. In Hollywood terms, it was flawless PR. In royal terms, it was composure under pressure. Handler's joke may have sparked immediate attention, but Meghan's management of the moment ensured it didn't spiral into uncontrolled chaos. Yet even control has limits. The audience, the cameras, and social media all have lives of their own. Once released, a moment like this grows, mutates, and evolves beyond anyone's immediate control. And evolve it did. Within hours, Handler's line became fodder for analysis, discussion, and debate. News cycles dissected the remark, podcasts examined its implications, social media users recreated, remixed, and shared the moment ad infinitum. Fans debated Meghan's authenticity, critics questioned her adaptation to royal life, and neutral observers were fascinated by the clash of culture, expectation, and media attention. Handler's joke had become a lens through which millions examined the intersection of celebrity and royalty, a lens that illuminated cracks, contrasts, and contradictions that had always existed but were now impossible to ignore. Even backstage, the collision of worlds created tension. Meghan's advisors communicated with Hollywood publicists, royal aides, and social media strategists simultaneously. Contingency plans were drafted for potential backlash, amplification, and narrative framing. Every move Meghan made, every handshake, every wave, was calculated not just for optics, but for its potential to mitigate or exacerbate the collision Handler had initiated. For someone living in two worlds, every gesture becomes data, analyzed, interpreted, and leveraged. Yet Chelsea's joke also revealed something deeper: the fragility inherent in bridging Hollywood and the monarchy. One demands charisma and performance. The other requires tradition and restraint. Handler's comment forced Meghan to navigate that fragility publicly. Every audience, from casual viewers to royal commentators, now saw the tension clearly. A woman expertly trained in one domain, challenged unexpectedly in another. The collision was inevitable, but Handler ensured it was visible, undeniable, and unforgettable. And the most compelling question lingers: what happens when the worlds of Hollywood and royalty intersect in such a public, pointed, and strategic way? How does someone like Meghan respond when humor exposes perceived inconsistencies in persona, when every gesture is scrutinized, and when global attention magnifies even the slightest reaction? Handler didn't just ask a question. She demonstrated it, creating a scenario that forced observation, speculation, and debate on a massive scale. Because while the red carpet may have been a stage, it was also a battlefield. Handler's joke was a spark, and the collision of Hollywood and the monarchy ensured the fire would spread. Meghan's response, both in real-time poise and in private strategic maneuvering, would define the trajectory of this story, shaping media narratives, celebrity opinions, and public perception for weeks to come. And as the evening unfolded, as cameras shifted focus to awards and speeches, the collision Handler had initiated continued to reverberate. Discussions, whispers, and debates about Meghan's authenticity, adaptability, and image management began surfacing in unexpected places. Late-night shows, entertainment panels, social media threads, and private conversations in Hollywood's elite circles. Handler's quip wasn't a joke confined to a single moment. It was a catalyst for an ongoing narrative, one that Meghan now had to navigate with precision, poise, and foresight. The collision of Hollywood and the monarchy had been made public, undeniable, and unavoidable. And as the night ended and the media frenzy began, a lingering truth remained. When two powerful systems of perception collide, even someone as prepared and poised as Meghan Markle can find herself navigating uncharted territory. The story was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. And what came next would challenge everything Meghan thought she knew about controlling her public image, navigating fame, and surviving in the glare of global attention. Have you ever wondered what happens behind closed doors when the world believes it knows everything about a public figure? When millions have watched, debated, and shared your every reaction, the real drama begins after the cameras stop clicking. For Meghan Markle, the Critics' Choice Awards of 2026 were more than a public spectacle. They were a trigger, a spark that ignited a private fallout far more intense than anything the audience saw on the red carpet. Backstage, the air was thick with tension. Meghan's team moved quickly, whispering in hallways, coordinating strategy, and analyzing the precise trajectory of Handler's jab. Advisors huddled with PR experts, debating every possible outcome. Should Meghan issue a statement? Should she respond subtly through social media, or maintain complete silence? Every choice had potential consequences, and the stakes were higher than ever. In Hollywood, a misstep could go viral in minutes. In the royal sphere, it could ripple across centuries of protocol and tradition. Meghan was trapped between two worlds, each demanding a different type of response, and neither forgiving mistakes. Inside her private suite, Meghan's composure faltered for the first time that evening. The smile, the wave, the careful poise she had maintained for cameras and audiences, all of it was a mask. Handler's words had penetrated, revealing the vulnerability beneath her carefully constructed persona. Advisors noted the subtle signs: a deep breath held too long, the tightening of shoulders, a distant gaze. In these private moments, The pressures of dual identities collided, magnified by the awareness that Handler's comment would be dissected endlessly across media platforms. Social media continued its relentless amplification. Clips of Handler's quip were shared, remixed, and commented upon, with audiences projecting their own interpretations. Some saw humor, others criticism. Some debated the legitimacy of Meghan's royal claim, while others defended her fiercely. The volume of discussion was overwhelming, and every new post, meme, or headline forced Meghan's team to reevaluate strategy. In real time, the private fallout mirrored a public storm. But this storm was invisible, insidious, and unrelenting. What made this situation particularly complex was the psychological weight of expectation. Meghan had spent years cultivating poise, control, and strategic adaptability. She had mastered the art of media navigation, balancing Hollywood visibility with royal duties. And yet, Handler's comment reminded her, and everyone else, that no persona, no matter how meticulously crafted, is impervious to critique. The line between public image and personal identity became blurred, and the pressure to respond without overreacting intensified exponentially. Staff and advisors debated every potential move. Should Meghan issue a controlled media statement emphasizing her dignity and commitment to her roles? Should she allow the public to speculate, using silence as a tool? Should she reach out privately to Hollywood friends or royal associates to manage narratives before they spiraled? Each decision carried risks, and the immediacy of social media meant that mistakes would be magnified instantly. This was damage control in an environment where every microsecond counts, and where perception often outweighs fact. Meanwhile, Meghan herself faced a deeply personal reckoning. Handler's jab had not just targeted her public image, it had questioned the authenticity of her identity. In private moments, Meghan considered every aspect of her life under public scrutiny, from her Hollywood past to her royal present. Handler's words were a mirror, reflecting both admiration and skepticism, and forcing Meghan to confront how her dual roles were perceived. The private fallout was as much internal as external, navigating embarrassment, frustration, and the relentless pressure of maintaining a flawless public persona while privately recalibrating strategy. The advisors' discussions became more urgent as the viral clips circulated. Conversations ranged from tactical social media interventions to long-term media strategy adjustments. Every detail of Meghan's appearance, gestures, and interactions from the red carpet was analyzed. Did her smile seem forced? Did her wave convey confidence or restraint? Were there moments that could be interpreted as vulnerability or defensiveness? Each small detail had the potential to fuel narratives that Meghan had spent years controlling. Compounding the challenge was Handler's history of influence. Chelsea is not simply a comedian. She is a commentator with reach across Hollywood and beyond. Her opinions carry weight, her humor resonates, and her timing is deliberate. For Meghan, this meant that Handler's jab was not fleeting. It would ripple across platforms, journalists, talk shows, and gossip columns, creating layers of interpretation that required immediate and careful attention. The fallout was not merely reputational. It was psychological, strategic, and emotional. Private meetings within Meghan's team explored multiple contingency scenarios. Could a subtle public appearance redirect attention? Would private communications with allies mitigate the impact? How could they leverage Meghan's authenticity without appearing reactive? Each option was dissected with surgical precision, as the team balanced rapid response against long-term reputation management. This is the unseen side of celebrity, where every choice is weighted, calculated, and potentially scrutinized by millions of observers in real time. Yet even with careful planning, uncertainty remained. The public response is unpredictable, social media dynamics are volatile, and Hollywood gossip moves faster than any team can react. Meghan had to navigate not only the immediate aftermath of Handler's comment, but also anticipate secondary waves of scrutiny. Every glance, every gesture, and every statement had to be measured, because once publicized, perception becomes reality, and correcting it is a challenge often more difficult than controlling it in the first place. The emotional stakes were high. Handler's quip had tapped into insecurities Meghan had carefully managed. The private fallout wasn't just about controlling the media, It was about controlling the perception of herself as a figure who bridges two demanding worlds. In quiet moments, Meghan may have questioned how much of her public persona was sustainable, how deeply public opinion shaped her identity, and how she could maintain integrity while responding strategically. Even as advisors debated strategy, Meghan's inner circle observed subtle reactions from Hollywood peers. Friends offered support, others expressed concern, and some distanced themselves to avoid association with controversy. The private fallout was not limited to immediate reactions. It extended to relationships, influence, and the network of alliances that Meghan relied upon for both professional and personal support. Handler's joke had, in a single moment, triggered a cascade of considerations spanning career, image, and interpersonal dynamics. And yet, Meghan's response was deliberate, controlled, and strategic. Publicly, she continued her appearances, maintaining poise and professionalism. Privately, she and her team dissected every angle, every possibility, and every potential consequence. This balance between public composure and private strategizing is central to surviving in spaces where Hollywood and royalty intersect, spaces where one misstep can become global news and where every reaction is interpreted through the lens of celebrity culture and royal scrutiny. As the night progressed, the private fallout continued to unfold. Advisors monitored media trends, social media analytics, and public sentiment, constantly updating Meghan on emerging narratives. Each development required recalibration, reinforcing the reality that Handler's quip was not a fleeting incident, but a catalyst for ongoing attention, speculation, and strategic decisions.